Hello, welcome to session 3 on the walkthrough on the PM Specimen Exam. And now it's time to do section C questions. Here, this first question, if you go to the navigator, it's the first question in the section C exam, in the section C area. Question number 31 it is. So, here, let me go through the requirement first. Calculate the following for the month of November. Okay, now showing all workings clearly. Okay, workings have marks here. Okay, extract from the management information for the month of November are shown below. The variances are shown here. Okay, and you have to recalculate variance, and also show all workings clearly. Number one is sales price variance and sales volume contribution variance. Okay, that's part A, number one scenario. Okay, here you have to calculate sales price variance. Okay. If you memorize sales price variance, it is basically the difference between actual selling price per unit, that's the F2 formula, minus standard selling price per unit. Taking the difference of both will give you the difference in the selling prices, and then you multiply it with actual units sold. Okay. That's a formula, sales price variance. And then also you have to calculate sales volume variance. And the sales volume variance, if I get to memorize the formula, actual units sold minus budgeted units sold into, if the company uses marginal costing, it's going to be standard profit per unit. If it uses absorption costing, it's going to be, if it's marginal costing, it's going to be standard contribution per unit. If absorption costing, is going to be standard contribution per unit. So here it's clearly mentioned it's going to be sales volume contribution variance. So I'm just going to multiply it with standard contribution per unit. So that's the formula. Now, in the second part, you have to calculate material price planning variance and material price operational variance. Actually, the total material variance is sum of material price and material usage. However, both price and usage could be because of uncontrollable factors that managers shouldn't be responsible for. Okay, production manager or purchasing manager. Okay, or in case of production manager is doing purchasing and production at the same time for both. So for that matter, in order to assess manager's performance, we need to split the variance. We need to revise our budget so that the actual performance or real performance of the manager can be assessed. So that very price variance needs to be broken down into planning variance and operational variance. Okay, and planning is O versus R. We compare original standard with revised standard. And in case of operational variance, we compare revised with actual, so that a true performance picture really comes up. And the manager should only be responsible for the controllable factors, which he can control. So look for the uncontrollable factors in the scenario. If you think that manager doesn't control that, so it's time to revise the standard. So original versus revised, just identify the planning errors, that the planning team should focus that particular variance is telling their efficiency, showing their performance, that how well they have forecasted the budgets, okay, or if that basically tells their level of accuracy while forecasting or while setting budgets. So if it's too adverse, that means they didn't forecast it well. If it was, so whatever, if it was favorable, so it's basically telling their performance. However, revised less actual is telling the performance, operational performance of the performance, true performance, real performance of the operational manager, whether purchasing manager, whether production manager, whether sales manager. Okay. Okay. So here, and in third part, we need to calculate the labor rate and labor efficiency variance. So this is only advanced variance. 1 and 3 is basically simple F2 variance. Okay? But there are two products here. Carrico is an electronic company which makes two types of television, plasma screen TV and LCD. It operates within a highly competitive market and is constantly under pressure to reduce prices. Okay, we will have a look at the sales price variance, what would have an impact on that, because it is under constant pressure to reduce the price. We'll check what was the actual selling price. Carrico operates a standard power costing system and standard marginal costing system, and performs a detailed variance analysis of both products, do the control with the help of the variance analysis, where the extract from the management information for the month of November is shown below. So material price variance was adverse. Okay, this is the total material price variance. We might have to break down into planning and operational. Okay, because management or purchasing manager shouldn't be responsible for the planning part of it, planning price variance. So that's for 2, and there are notes attached here as well. Then there's the labor variance, which shows the total labor variance, which is sum of rate and efficiency. It is overall adverse. So the budgeted total sales volume for TVs was 1180 units. Okay, that's the total budgeted volume, consisting of an equal mix of plasma screen TVs and LCD screen. So that means equal means standard mix is going to be 1180 divided by 2. So standard mix for both is going to be 590 units each. Okay. So let's and also standard selling price for plasma and LCD. Okay, is also given. So we need to calculate separate price and volume variance for plasma and for LCD. Okay. Here the standard selling price 350 and 300 for LCD. Actual selling price is also given 330 and 290. Okay, that means the standard selling prices were more and actual has been reduced. Actual selling price for plasma wasn't reduced, but it was reduced for LCD. Standard selling price for plasma was 350. Yes, it was reduced to 330. And for LCD it was 300 and it was reduced to 290. So that makes an adverse price variance. Okay. The standard contribution is also given, that's 190 and 180. That will be needing for while calculating sales volume variance for both. So let's start doing part A. So sales price variance we have to calculate for plasma as well as LCD. Okay. So control X is control X, control V. It works here. Okay. So whenever you have to cut and paste, you can use control X and the CD here in the exam window, which is the spreadsheet, customized spreadsheet screen available here. So here it's going to be different. Here I'm going to write the actual selling price per unit. Okay, and here I'm going to write standard selling price per unit, and in third, take difference in the prices. Okay. And in the fourth one, you will get the variance. Yeah, difference, and then in the third one, you need to multiply with actual units sold. And the fourth one, you will get the variance. Okay. That's not visible to you. Just copy this here and go to format. We need to uh, centralize it or probably wrap text. So go to cells. Okay. Need to it has got something to do with the alignment, not the border. So I'm going to go to the alignment tab, and here I want to wrap text. I want to centralize it horizontally as well as vertically. I want to apply the changes and okay. So here it is right in front of me, and then you can just expand to make the text visible. So here it is. Just do a lot of practice, do all the variance questions here so that while you're doing here, it doesn't take time. So actual selling price, now I can start filling up the details here. Actual units sold, what are the actual number of units sold? Yeah, actual sales was 750 for plasma and 650 for LCD. So actual units sold are 750 and 650. Okay, now I need standard selling price. Standard selling prices were 350 and 300. 350 and 300. However, actual selling prices were 330 and 290. 330 and 290. Now have the format. It's easy to just put the values in there. Once you have the format, it's easy to just punch in the data and then calculate variance. See how I am going to calculate variance. Okay, so let's take the difference. Okay, you have the difference, control C, control V. Okay, and now in order to calculate the variance, difference into units sold. Okay, control C, control V. Okay, that's adverse because the actual selling price was lower than the standard selling price. That's why I put actual selling price in the first place. So the formula is standard selling price minus actual selling price. That's why I put it here. So in case it was lower, that means it's adverse. You're losing profit. Your actual profit would be lower than the budgeted profit due to change in the selling price. Okay, or revenue at the same time. So here again it's adverse, and the total variance, okay, just apply some formula here, equals sum and so here it is 21500 adverse. Okay, that's it for sales price variance. Now I can copy the same thing here and then I can calculate my sales volume variance here. Okay, just arrange it again. Here it's going to be the difference between actual and first column. It's going to be actual units sold minus budgeted units sold. Okay, and you will get the difference in units. Once you have the difference in unit, you can then multiply. You can then multiply with standard contribution per unit in this case. Okay. And you get the variance. Okay. Actual units sold, I got it from here. I can copy from here, control C, bring it here. And budgeted units are right here. I told you it's half of 1180, so it's going to be 1180 divided by 2. That's the budgeted quantity. And control C, control V. And the rest of the formula has been calculated already. Here, as compared to the budgeted units, actual units for plasma were 160 more. That gave you more contribution because that's favorable change due to change in the volume. Since the volume was more, actual volume is more than. So it has a connection. By reducing the selling price, we get to sell more units than the budgeted units. That's the interdependence of the variance. Whenever you calculate the variance, do calculate, do check what was the reason for the variance. You should have that thing in your mind. Because while in the discursive question, you may be required to do that. So just by reduction of the selling price, because there were some price pressures at the same time, there were price pressures, so they reduce and they get to sell more. Here they sold 650 units more. Okay. Sorry, not 650, 60 units more. 650 instead of 590. So overall, the volume variance was favorable. And if you net off both the sales price, that will give you the total variance. So done for 4 marks here. We are done. Yeah, one thing we didn't update here is standard contribution per unit. See, the standard contribution per unit for plasma was 190 and 180. We can do that. Then the answer would be correct. 190 and 180 for LCD. And yes, now the answer is correct. Now we can check explain answer. It's 2 and 500 adverse for sales price variance. Look, we just copied, made a certain format, and just copy pasted down, and just updated the figures and changed a little text down there, and it was done automatically. Okay, without much effort. Okay, now move on to requirement number 2. That's part 2, where you are supposed to calculate material price and operational variance. So material price and variance Control X, Control V. Now we're doing this. Material price planning variance and operational variance. Okay, material price planning variance. What's the formula for material price planning variance? That's, let me explain to you. Okay, so there are 3 things: original standard and the revised standard. Things are controllable, uncontrollable for the manager. We just revise the standard. And then there are actual results. Okay, so if total variance was sum of price and usage, and then there were some factors uncontrollable. Okay, let's check what happened in this scenario. The sole reason for this increase was an increase in the purchase price of one of its key component X. Each plasma TV made and each LCD TV made requires 1 unit of component X, for which carried cost standard cost is 60 per unit. Okay, that's the standard cost. Due to a shortage of components in the marketplace, the market price for November went up to 85 per unit for X. Carried cost usually paid 80 per unit for it. Okay. So, for which carried standard cost, original standard was 60. Okay, due to a shortage of components in the marketplace, the market price went up to 85. Okay, so original standard was 60, and but due to shortage of material in the market, it was a factor which wasn't under the control of the manager. Shortage of material, it was uncontrollable, so it calls for the revision of the variance. Otherwise, manager would, and actually he bought for 80, but now in the market it was available for 65. If you compare 60 with 80, manager would be held responsible for total variance of 20, and he shouldn't be held responsible for that, because a part of this variance should be split into planning and operational. And for planning, compare O versus R. That really part of the variance is due to planning errors. That's due to incorrect forecasting. That has got nothing to do with the manager. That has got more to do with the planning department. That is showing the planning department inefficiency or their performance. Okay, that error goes to the planning department. So we need to split the variance into planning is O versus R, and now R versus A. Here it's showing the real performance, which is R versus A, and it seems to be a reasonable performance, while despite the material is available in the market at 85, now the manager purchased it at 80, so it shows a good performance of the purchasing manager. Yeah, so that's favorable. Okay, 85, you were supposed to get it at 85, you got it for 80 and you saved 5, so it's 5 favorable. So 5 favorable is telling the performance of the manager, and here 15 adverse is showing the performance of the planning department, and this is showing the real performance of the manager. So how to calculate material price? We need to break down into planning and operational. Here, only price. So while calculating material price variance, it's going to be, what's the formula? Write down the original formula. It's standard price minus actual price into actual quantity purchased. Okay. That's actual quantity purchased. Got it. And material, that's the material price variance. And now, in order to calculate material price planning variance, what is it going to be? And material price operational variance. So the original formula is right here. So what it is going to be? So here it's going to be, okay, and that's the formula. So here it will be comparison of original standard price O versus R. Original standard price minus revised, minus, because that is telling you the planning error, the performance of the planning department. Revised standard price. Comparison of original standard with that of the revised standard, because things are out of control, it calls for the revision of the standard into actual quantity purchased. That is the formula for material planning variance. Now for operational, it's going to be the difference between revised versus revised and actual. Okay, R versus O. So here it's going to be revised standard price less actual price into actual quantity purchased. We need to do that. We have the original standard price, revised standard price, and the actual price, but we don't have, in this question, we don't have actual quantity purchased. But what else we have here? Let's go through the scenario. We have the total material price variance, which is 28,000 adverse. We have the total material price variance that I wrote initially here was total material price variance, which was 28,000 adverse, and it was the difference between original standard price 60 and the actual price 80. Here, the formula here, you can get your actual quantity purchased from here. But what could it be? 60 minus 80, that's 20, right? What's that? That's 20. And if this is X here, can you calculate X? And here it is 28,000 adverse. So just divide 28,000 with 20. What are you going to get? Divide 28,000 with 20. You're going to get your actual quantity purchased, which was 1,400. And how you got to this figure, let me take you here. Okay, so you were supposed to buy it at 60, but you bought it for 80, and the actual total quantity was 1,400. That means your variance was 28,000 adverse. See how with the reverse working, you know the work back variance concept. That's basically we applied that work back variance concept from your F2. Okay, if you have good F2 concept, you shouldn't worry that you don't have the actual quantity. Okay, in case you're not able to find the actual quantity, just take any assumed quantity. As in section C, don't worry if you don't have the figure and you don't calculate. only you will be penalized once. Okay, if you take any assumed value, let's suppose 1000, you should be able to calculate the answer. You will get the answer only for actual quantity. For example, if it has it had 1 mark, your answer would be deducted only once. However, for the rest of the working, even 1000 was wrong, you will get the total answer. If these figures are right, these figures are plugged in right, you will get the answer, whatever the answer was there for material price and material planning variance. We will check the market scheme over here in the end as well. So this particular requirement had how much marks? 2 marks. Okay, maybe zero point 0.5 is for that. And this now let's do it here in Excel. How we're going to do that? So it's going to be original formula is original standard to be original standard price less O versus R. Revised standard price per unit. Original standard price per unit of material minus revised standard price per unit into actual purchase that we found as 1400. Okay, so that's for material price variance. Original standard was 60 and the revised was 85. See, that's 60 and then 85. It went up to 85 into 1400. Got your answer to be 35,000 adverse. And same what you did here, just copy paste it down. Control C and Control V. I just made a few amendments here. From planning, I can do operational, okay, and just make a little amendment in the formula. It's going to be revised standard price per unit less save your time, actual standard actual price per unit into actual quantity purchased. The rest of the formula is going to be the same as the F2 formula. So here it is. Now just amend the formula as here as well. So here it's going to be 85 revised less actual. Here it's going to be 85 and actual turned out to be 80. Actually we saved cost and it turns out to be a favorable variance. So material price variance, this thing is basically telling the performance of how well the forecasting has been. They should have forecasted instead of 80, setting it too low. They set a very inaccurate standard. However, they didn't foresee this shortage of the components. So this 35,000 variance doesn't belong to the operational real purchasing manager. That was that part of the variance goes the person who sets the budget wrong. Okay, now his performance, the purchasing, how well he purchased, his performance is here. Instead of buying it at 85, he still was able to bargain with on the price and saved for cost per unit of 5, and for 1400 units that he bought, he actually saved cost of 7,000 for the company. That shows a good performance of the purchasing manager. Next, we have to do in third part, we need to calculate the labor rate and labor efficiency variance, but we will have to go through the note number 3. Let's write the formulas right in front of you. Labor rate variance, Control B, Control U. Okay, it works well. These shortcuts, just get used to these shortcuts. So labor rate variance is going to be standard rate per hour minus actual rate per hour. That's basically telling you the difference between the standard rate and the actual rate. Change in the labor cost due to the change in the rate. The two things that can affect your labor cost, your estimated labor cost for actual units, and your actual cost, which is the flex labor cost and the actual cost. Two things that can make the difference. One could be the change in the rate, standard and actual, or one could be the change in standard hours and the actual hours. So the rate has got to do with the labor rate variance, and labor took more hours, that could cause an adverse efficiency variance. So could be due to two reasons, change in the rate or a change in the hours. So, and here it's going to be actual hours worked. That's the labor rate variance. And now labor variance. Labor efficiency variance, the formula is standard hours minus actual hours. Standard hours is for actual number of units, and actual hours are also for actual number of units. That actually gives you the like with like comparison. You cannot compare the budgeted hours with the actual hours, because the budgeted hours are for budgeted number of units. If budgeted units are different, the actual quantity is different. So definitely you need to flex your standards as per the actuals just to have a like with like comparison, because actual units should take these amount of hours, and actually took these hours. That tells you how efficient your labor was and how efficient they were in saving companies cost or increasing, how inefficient and they caused increasing the company's labor cost. So that has got to do with the labor efficiency. So that's labor efficiency variance. And the other one had to go got to do with the labor rate. Standard hours minus actual hours into actual hours worked. Sorry, into standard rate per hour. So here you can check one thing. When you're calculating labor rate variance, it's not actual hours worked. Here, it's actual hours paid. Okay, actual hours paid, because you are also paying for the idle time. However, when we are calculating variance, it's always actual hours worked. Always actual hours worked. Just like in material price variance, is actual quantity purchased. However, in material usage variance, it's actual quantity used. Okay, actual usage minus standard usage. Okay, and into standard price per kg gives you material usage variance. Okay, so now let's go to note number 3. Each plasma TV uses 2 standard hours of labor, and each LCD TV uses 1.5 standard hours of labor. Okay, what was the total labor rate variance? Total labor variance was 6050 at first. Okay, each plasma TV takes 2. Okay, each plasma TV takes 2 hours. However, uh, LCD TV takes 1.5 hours. Okay, standard hours. These are standard hours. Standard labor cost of labor is 14, and this also reflects the actual cost per labor hour for the company's permanent staff in November. However, because of the increase in sales and production volumes in November, the company also had to use temporary labor at the highest cost of 18 per hour. You see that the standard rate was 14, but the actual rate was more. It was because whatever capacity we had for the permanent staff, it was less for the month of November, and we had to hire more. We had to hire more labor, more temporary labor from outside. Okay, okay, got it. There is a labor rate variance which is adverse. Okay, to additional. Okay. The company also had to use temporary labor at the cost of 80 per hour. The total capacity of carriers for permanent workforce is 2200 per month. Okay, that's the total capacity, assuming full efficiency. Full efficiency means it takes 2, which is exactly equal to the standard hours, 2 per unit for LCD and 1 for plasma, and 1.5 per unit for LCD. Okay. In the month of November, the workforce were wholly efficient. They were wholly efficient. The permanent workforce were wholly efficient, taking exactly 2 hours to complete each plasma TV and exactly 1.5 hours to produce each LCD TV. The total labor variance therefore relates solely to the temporary workers. So whatever in this total variance goes to efficiency variance doesn't belong to the permanent workforce, it belongs to the temporary workforce. It belongs to the temporary workforce, okay? Taking exactly 2 hours to complete, okay, it was fine. The total labor variance relates solely to the temporary workers who took twice as long as the permanent workers to complete their production, who took twice as long. Okay, it's giving you a hint that what would have been their actual hours. Okay, now we need to find out uh, the total capacity of 2200 is basically 2200 hours, okay, for permanent staff. But what is basically required for the actual units, okay? We need to calculate the required hours, okay, for plasma as well as LCD. Okay, for plasma, if it was 2 per unit, what are the actual units? Actual production and sales for plasma is 750 and 650. So 750 multiplied by 750, actual units are produced and sold are same, and produced units are also 750. Here I need to add equal. Okay. So it requires 1500 hours for plasma, and now if 1 hour takes 1.5, and how many LCD we need to produce is 650. So what are the total required hours? So the total required hours are 24/7. However, hours available are only 2200. That means, yes, there was a shortfall. That's why we need to hire more labor. Okay. If I take the difference, how many excess hours were required? Okay. Excess hours required were 275. Okay. If the temporary workers took worked as efficiently as the permanent staff, because they had good learning curve, they have been doing it, but the temporary would have that learning curve. They might take long, and there's a hint given in here. If the existing worker did that extra amount of work, they would have taken 275 hours for those extra hours, okay, because the required hours were 2475, but they actually took twice as long. That means, just what would have been the actual hours? Actual hours for temporary workers should have been twice of these hours. So can I calculate, if ignoring that all of the efficiency variance relates to the temporary workers, can I calculate my efficiency variance now? Taking standard as 275 standard hours and actual hours, just create a link down there. Yeah, both you can create a link so that your examiner can follow. Is equal to 275 minus 550 into standard rate per hour, which is standard labor cost per hour, is into 14. See the formula over here and the formula above. What turns out to be the efficiency variance? So it is 3850 adverse. If I want to calculate the labor rate variance, what was standard rate? Standard rate was 14. But the actual rate actually increased because of hiring the more staff, because the additional hours were required, and the capacity for permanent staff was only 2200. And now the actual hours, ignoring that it says this also reflect the actual cost per labor for the company's permanent staff. So this thing also suggests that labor rate variance, whatever is in the total variance, that means the total variance is 6050. However, the efficiency variance is only 3850. Then there was some labor rate variance as well due to the temporary workers. Yes, and that entire variance is due to the temporary workers only. Okay, so I won't just multiply it with 2475. Okay, in order to calculate the labor rate variance. Here again, I need to just consider that this labor rate variance was also due to the temporary workers, and the actual cost per labor for permanent was exactly, standard was 14 and actual was 14 as well. Okay, and into 2200 there was no labor rate variance and no labor efficiency variance. Okay, whatsoever was the efficiency variance, for example 2200 was the standard hours and the actual hours were 2200 at the same time into standard rate. So there was no efficiency variance, no labor variance for permanent staff. It was only for the temporary staff. So here I need to instead of multiplying the 2475 or 2200, I need to multiply with the hours, actual hours paid for the temporary workers only, and this will give me my variance. See, let me go through the answers now. Labor efficiency is 3850 adverse, labor rate is 2200 adverse. Okay, that's right. Material price variance is 7000 favorable, it's 35,000 adverse. The order workings are just in line with the answer, and it's time to move on to the next question. I have viewed the entire screen. Next part, done with all these parts. Explain the reasons why Carrier would be interested in the material price planning variance and the material price operational variance. Then 9 marks here. Okay, 1 mark you would have for the controllability principle that you need to explain. The reason why Carrier would be interested in the material price planning variance and material price operational variance. Why they needed to split the variance into price planning and operational. Because there's a concept that manager performance should be assessed on the basis of the controllable factors. That if there are things which are uncontrollable for the manager, just like in this case, there was shortage of material and the market in the market it was available at a higher price of 85 than 60. So the manager's performance is measured with the help of the operational variance that actually showed that his performance was favorable because the material operational variance was favorable. It was 35,000 adverse was the planning variance. So for this controllability, explaining the controllability principle, you have 1 mark. Next, you have 3 marks for just explaining why material price variance, what it is and how is it calculated. It is O versus R, and it is an application-based scenario. Just by using the workings, you need to illustrate your answer and whether and what it shows the performance of the forecasting department, the planning department shows their performance, not the performance of the operational manager. So you have 3 marks for this material for explaining when teacher explains things to you, he explains with certain examples by giving examples so that the main concept is clear. So while you're writing, action verb is explain what you have to explain. The object is the reason, and it's an application-based requirement. Why Carrier would be interested, you need to link your answers to the scenario. Talking generally won't give you 3 marks for discussion of material price planning variance. And you get 3 marks for discussion of material price operational variance. 3, 3, 6, 7, maybe 2 marks. Yeah, pardon me, there are 2 marks for the explaining the controllability principle, and then 1 mark for any other reason. It could be any other reason for planning. Any other point while discussing planning and operational variance? Let me go to explain answer. Here was the marking scheme right in front. 2 for discussing controllability principle, 3 for material planning variance, material operating variance, and for other reasons. 1 for other reasons. Now here is make the idea clear in the form of the paragraphs. You could give a heading if you want. Our heading in the performance area question is a must. Okay. Here you could give a heading, it's your choice. But here you could give a heading just to make it more clear. Controllability principle. Yeah. Before the material price planning and operational variance were calculated, the only information available as regard material purchasing was that there was an adverse material price variance of 28,000. The purchasing department will be assessed on the basis of this variance, yet on its own, it is not a reliable indicator of the purchasing department's efficiency. The reason it is not a reliable indicator is because market conditions can change, leading to an increase in price, and this change in the market is not within the control of the manager. So by analyzing, breaking the total variance, which was 28,000 adverse in this scenario, okay, it doesn't really gives you the efficiency of the purchasing manager. How it shows that it shows an adverse performance. However, when we analyzed into planning and operational, so it gave the performance of the planning department, okay, in the form of the planning variance, and the performance of the operational manager, purchasing manager. By analyzing the material price variance further, breaking down into 2 components, so the total variance doesn't really give you the total idea. Okay, so by analyzing it into planning and operational variance, the variance actually becomes a more useful assessment tool. The planning variance represents the uncontrollable element, and the operational variance represents the controllable element. Okay, the planning variance is really useful for providing feedback on. Okay, now the planning variance part that has got 3 marks. Planning variance is really useful for providing feedback on how skilled management is in estimating the future prices. Okay, and in this scenario, it was 35,000 adverse. It shows their efficiency that they were not able to forecast the increase in the prices, and they set a standard to be really low as 60. Giving this detail could help to improve planning and standard setting in the future. Okay, while focusing on the planning adverse variances in the next year, maybe they can improve their planning, okay, and forecasting. Maybe they set realistic targets in the future, okay, and that will reduce the total variance as well as increase their efficiency, because there are certain factors which are not in the hands of the manager. Okay, the forecast cost can be volatile in a volatile market. For example, oil prices change, market price of material will change, and it is just not that the operational manager can control, but this is what planning department can forecast. Okay, we have got good forecasting and planning skills. The operational manager, not discussion of the operational manager paragraph. Operational manager is more meaningful in that it measures the purchasing department efficiency. Given the market condition which prevailed at that time, material was available at 85. Here it again did the general discussion, but you should use the figures as well to make it more clear. Okay, so it was available at 85, but they purchased it at 80. And the total adverse variance, talking about the variance at the same time, it was 7,000 favorable. Here it's a general answer. Okay, but do mention the variances as well. Okay, it will make your explanation more clear for the examiner. So giving this detail could help to improve planning. Okay, so without this breakdown, the variance, the purchasing department could have been held accountable for all the adverse variance, which was not indicative of their actual performance. Okay, so that's how you will discuss this question. Okay, thank you very much. That's it from today's session. Thank you. I hope you understood. So just do a good practice on this platform. Do each and every kit question in this platform. Okay, just explore how the word processing sheet, explore the spreadsheet available here, so that explore the functionality here, this formula sheet here, how to flag, how to navigate through the platform, okay? And just make sure you have good learning curve before on this platform before real exam comes. Still have plenty of time. Thank you very much.